Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. Today we're going to talk about one of the other claims that the museum has in terms of what makes New Jersey best. In this case, New Jersey is the fastest battleship ever built. So the Iowa class was designed to move at 33 knots. No other battleship or battle cruiser has ever been designed and built for that high of a speed. Some have been built for 30, 31, 32 knots, but never for 33. And all of the Iowa-class battleships at one time or another achieved a top speed of 33 knots. So other ships that were designed to go above 30 knots were primarily late-generation battleships, the fast battleships. So Battleship Bismarck was designed to do 30 knots. She did that. She couldn't get an extra 3 knots. The French Richelieu was designed for 30 or 31 knots. Never got any higher than that. Let's see. Other similar generation battleships had speeds in the high 20s or low 30s. HMS Hood was designed for 32 knots. Her design was overloaded, so while she might have achieved that speed on occasion, by the time of her loss, her maximum speed was only about 28 knots. So only the United States built battleships designed to do 33 knots, and they only built the Iowa class for that. Part of the reason for this is gaining extra speed is not a straight line. You add more horsepower, you get more speed. It's a very steep curve. So to get 33 knots, Iowa-class battleships had to have turbines capable of making 212,000 horsepower, whereas the next fastest battleship that was only going, say, 1 knot slower only had the capability to make 180,000 horsepower. So to get 1 more knot, it took another significant amount of horsepower to get up there. New Jersey is the fastest battleship ever built in the world because of her Vietnam commission in 1968. So at that time, she was restored right here in the Philadelphia Navy Yard, and during that recommissioning period, they removed a lot of the extra weight that had been added to the design during World War II. Because it was such an austere restoration, they weren't adding a ton of new equipment on. In fact, the ship's crew shrunk from nearly 3,000 during World War II to about 1,500 personnel. So not only do you lose all the personnel, you no longer need all the food for them, you no longer need all of the clothing and other things. So Battleship New Jersey was at that point the lightest that any Iowa-class battleship would be in service. Not only that, she was the lightest by design because Iowa had a second story to her armored conning tower that New Jersey doesn't, and Wisconsin and Missouri each have thicker armored forward and aft bulkheads. So New Jersey was just the lightest to begin with, and now she went to sea with even less than any of the other ships ever went to sea with. On top of that, she had just gotten out of dry dock. So her hull was clean. There was no growth under there, which is often an issue after a ship has been in service for a while. So by the time the engineering department gets really good at what they're doing, well, then the marine growth has already gotten on there and they can't really get up to the high speed. So under Captain J. Edward Snyder, crew morale was extremely good. And at that time, unlike in the 1980s when these ships were brought back, steam turbines like these still proliferated in the Navy. So the crew knew how to use them. And with high morale, a clean ship, and a light ship, they were able to get the ship up on sea trials to 35.2 knots. Another significant thing about getting her up to this speed is other Iowa-class battleships got over 33 knots in trials as well. However, those trials were in shallow water or fresh water where you didn't have the same density as ocean water, or where the water you're pushing off the bottom of the ocean in shallow waters, pushing back up and helping move you a little bit faster. So New Jersey did these trials in deep salt water, so there had to be no math done to say that, all right, she achieved 33.2 knots and that, or 35.2 knots, and that then gets mathed down to 32.5 or whatnot when you take into account the density of water. So other Iowa-class battleships got close to that speed, but New Jersey was the only one to do it in seawater, in her wartime loadout, which just happened to be lighter than any of the others' wartime loadouts. Another reason that we're able to claim that we're the fastest battleship ever is because the Guinness Book of World Records lists us as the fastest battleship ever. Check out the link down in the description. So, even though we had the ability to attain 33 knots and on occasion 35 knots under ideal conditions, in wartime you never have ideal conditions. Oftentimes parts of the power plant would be shut down for maintenance work. So on 3 screws we could only make about 26 knots if we were going all out. Normally we wouldn't be going all out, even in combat. Our most economical cruising range is 15 knots, and with that we can go 15,000 nautical miles and stay at sea for about a full month. If we crank our speed up to 33 knots, well, then we can only stay at sea for about 6.5 days. We just don't carry the oil for it. This ship burns a tremendous amount of oil at top speed. So even though she can get up to speed and she can maintain above 30 knot speeds for hours and hours and hours at a time, you can't get much range out of that. It's for emergencies only. Some smaller or lighter warships are able to achieve the same types of speeds as battleships, and some, like destroyer-sized ships, are even able to get up to, say, 37 knots, and some, under ideal conditions that were really designed for speed, were able to break the 40-knot barrier. But even today, most surface ships still do about 30 knots maximum speed. The power required to get above that is pretty astronomical. So even modern nuclear carriers, the capital ships of today, can only do a little above 30 knots, officially. Unofficially, their actual top speeds have never been publicly released, so theoretically, Enterprise, when she was brand new, running under 8 nuclear reactors, her crew said that they outran the destroyer Escort, but nobody's ever been able to say what speed that was. And that would be impressive because we're talking a ship that's nearly twice the displacement and over 200 feet longer than New Jersey. Thanks for watching today. If you have any questions or comments, be sure to drop them down below. We'll get back to you. Click the like, share, and subscribe buttons and the bell icon so that you hear from us when we're posting new content, and we try to update regularly. If you like the content we produce and the work that the museum's doing, consider checking out the comments and supporting the museum.